After I helped my husband become a CEO, he looked me in the eyes and said, "Claire, you need to learn how to be a wife." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. This was the same man who had entered my life with nothing but ambition and a dream. The same man whose first major investment came from my family. The same man whose company survived because I introduced him to investors, opened doors that had been closed for years, and placed my own reputation behind his name. I didn't just give Ethan Cole an opportunity. I gave him a platform. And somehow, after standing on that platform long enough, he began to believe he had built the entire tower himself. The woman standing beside him that night was Madison Reed, his chief strategy officer, his closest business partner, and apparently, the person who understood him better than his own wife. The first time I realized something was wrong was at Whitmore Holdings' annual gala in Manhattan. The event was held on the top floor of our headquarters, overlooking the city lights. Executives, investors, and industry leaders filled the ballroom. Everyone wanted to speak with Ethan. 5 years ago, almost no one knew his name. Now, business magazines called him one of the most promising CEOs in the smart home industry. People forgot how he got there. But I never did. Because I was there when he had nothing. I was there when he sat across from my father in our family home, nervous but determined. My father had asked him one question. "What exactly do you want to build?" Ethan had answered without hesitation. "Something that proves I belong." At the time, I admired that answer. He wasn't born into wealth. He didn't inherit connections. He had ambition. And ambition, when combined with talent, could create something extraordinary. That was why I chose him. Not because he needed my family's name, but because I believed he could become someone worthy of standing beside me. 5 years later, Lumina Smart Home was valued at nearly $400 million. Ethan had transformed a struggling subsidiary into one of Whitmore Holdings' fastest-growing companies. And I was proud of him. I really was. Until that night. When I walked into the ballroom, I saw Madison standing beside him. She wore a red evening gown that demanded attention. Her hand rested naturally on Ethan's arm. Not professionally. Not casually. Naturally. Like she had done it 100 times before. When she noticed me approaching, she slowly removed her hand. Then she smiled. "Claire, you're finally here." She didn't call me Mrs. Whitmore. She didn't call me Chairman Whitmore. She spoke to me like we were equals. Like she belonged in my place. Her eyes moved over my white dress. "Your dress is beautiful." Then she looked down at her own gown and laughed softly. "I don't think I could pull off something like this. After all, I've spent the last few years running between factories, suppliers, and overseas meetings with Ethan." She smiled. "My closet is mostly business suits." Her words sounded harmless. But every sentence carried the same message. She was the one who struggled beside him. I was just the woman who arrived after success. The lucky heiress. The wife who benefited from his achievements. I looked at her quietly. Then I looked at Ethan. He noticed the tension. "Claire," he said, stepping toward me. "Let's go say hello to Mr. Harrison." He arrived earlier. He gently placed a hand around my waist and guided me away. Madison stayed behind. But I noticed something. Ethan never asked her why she had been holding his arm. He never told her it was inappropriate. He simply moved on. At the time, I let it go. Because I trusted my husband. That was my first mistake. The gala continued as if nothing had happened. Ethan moved from one conversation to another with practiced ease, speaking to investors, board members, and executives who had once refused to return his calls. I stayed beside him for most of the evening. Not because I was afraid to leave him alone with Madison. I simply wanted to watch. Madison had always been clever. She never did anything obvious enough to be accused of crossing a line. She stayed close enough to Ethan to appear indispensable, but not intimate. She spoke for him when a conversation paused. She remembered the names of investors' children. She knew which projects made him proud and which setbacks still embarrassed him. Every gesture was calculated to create the impression that they were a team. Not CEO and executive. Not married man and employee. A team. Near the end of the evening, Ethan was speaking with 3 members of the Whitmore board about Lumina's expansion into Europe. Madison appeared beside him again. No one invited her into the conversation. She simply stepped in at the right moment and continued a story Ethan had started. The Berlin launch nearly collapsed 48 hours before the presentation, she said with a laugh. The local distributor threatened to walk away, the demonstration system stopped working, and Ethan hadn't slept in 2 days. One of the directors smiled. That sounds like a nightmare. It was. Madison looked at Ethan with open admiration. But Ethan refused to leave the venue. We stayed there all night rebuilding the system. I asked. She turned to me, as though surprised I had spoken. Yes. Her smile softened. Ethan and I. Then she reached toward his sleeve. There's something on your cuff. Ethan glanced at me before moving his arm away. Madison's fingers stopped in the air. It lasted less than a second. But everyone around us noticed. She withdrew her hand gracefully. Sorry, she said. I've spent so many years working beside him that taking care of small things has become a habit. Her eyes moved toward me. I hope you don't mind. I held her gaze. What exactly would I mind? The smile on her face flickered. I only meant that you've become accustomed to touching another woman's husband in public? The conversation around us stopped. Madison's face changed. Only slightly. But enough. I didn't mean anything inappropriate. Of course not. I handed my champagne glass to Ethan. Then I stepped closer and adjusted the collar of his tuxedo myself. You're simply exhausted. I looked at Madison with concern. People often lose track of professional boundaries when they're under too much pressure. One of the older directors cleared his throat to hide a laugh. Madison's cheeks flushed. I know exactly where the boundaries are. Do you? I asked. She opened her mouth, but I continued before she could answer. You interrupted a board-level conversation without being invited. You described internal operational problems at a public event. And you just admitted that physical familiarity with your CEO has become a habit. I smiled. If I were you, I would stop talking before this becomes an HR matter. The warmth disappeared from her expression. Ethan's jaw tightened. Claire. I turned to him. Yes. His eyes warned me to stop. That interested me more than Madison's behavior. He wasn't worried that his executive had crossed a line. He was worried that I was embarrassing her. Madison lowered her head. I apologize. Her voice trembled just enough to invite sympathy. I never intended to disrespect you. I looked at the board members around us. Did she disrespect me? No one answered immediately. Then Director Langford, who had known me since childhood, smiled. I think Ms. Reed may have forgotten that Claire is not simply Ethan's wife. He turned to Madison. She is the executive chair of the company that owns Lumina. Another director nodded. And the Berlin expansion you mentioned was approved and financed by Claire's committee. Madison's face grew paler. Director Langford continued. You said Claire was fortunate to remain above the difficult work. I remember her spending 3 weeks in Germany negotiating the regulatory approvals that made your launch possible. He lifted his glass. Some work is simply less visible than standing beside the CEO at a gala. A quiet laugh moved through the group. Madison looked at Ethan. This time, he did not defend her. Apologize properly, he said. His voice was low. Madison stared at him as if he had struck her. Then she turned to me. I'm sorry, Claire. Chairman Whitmore, I corrected. She swallowed. I'm sorry, Chairman Whitmore. I did not respond. I simply turned to the directors and continued the conversation without her. A few minutes later, Madison walked away. Ethan leaned toward me. You didn't have to humiliate her. I smiled without looking at him. She did that herself. She made one careless comment. She made several deliberate ones. You're reading too much into it. And you're choosing not to read anything at all. His expression hardened. This is neither the time nor the place. You're right. I picked up another glass of champagne. This is a company event. Which is why your chief strategy officer should have remembered she was an employee before pretending to be your wife. Ethan went silent. I left the gala shortly after that. People moved aside as I crossed the ballroom. Some wished me good night. Others mentioned upcoming meetings. No one called me Mrs. Cole. They called me Chairman Whitmore. That distinction mattered. Not because I was ashamed of my marriage, but because I had spent 15 years building a reputation before Ethan entered the company. I had negotiated acquisitions, restructured failing divisions, and protected Whitmore Holdings through 2 major market downturns. I was not a decorative wife standing beside a successful husband. Ethan's success existed inside an empire I had helped build. When we arrived home, he opened the car door for me. The driveway lights illuminated his face. He was still handsome. That had been the first thing I noticed about him. He had walked into a charity dinner 6 years earlier wearing a borrowed tuxedo and the kind of confidence men usually inherited with money. He knew he did not belong in that room. He entered anyway. I admired that. Later, when he told me about his plan for Lumina, I saw more than ambition. I saw discipline. He understood products, customers, and people. Most importantly, he was hungry enough to work. My father had been skeptical. He wants access, he told me. So does everyone who enters this family, I replied. At least Ethan is honest about it. I had never believed Ethan married me for love alone. I was not naive. He loved me. But he also understood what marrying me could give him. I accepted that because I understood what he could give me in return. He could take a neglected division of Whitmore Holdings and build something valuable. He could turn his hunger into growth. For years, our arrangement worked. Perhaps that was why I had ignored the first signs that he no longer considered it an arrangement between equals. Inside the house, I removed my earrings and placed them on the console table. Ethan loosened his tie. You went too far tonight. I looked at him through the mirror. Did I? Madison has spent 5 years helping me build Lumina. She also spent 20 minutes publicly implying that your wife contributed nothing. She was nervous. She was confident enough to touch you. His eyes narrowed. Nothing is happening between us. I didn't say there was. Then what exactly are you accusing me of? I turned around. I'm accusing you of allowing an executive to use her closeness to you as a source of authority. She speaks for you. She inserts herself into conversations above her position. She treats your parents like family. She touches you in public. And when she humiliates me, your concern is whether I embarrassed her. Ethan rubbed his forehead. You're making this personal. She made it personal. I walked toward my study and removed a folder from the desk. I had compliance begin reviewing her conduct 2 weeks ago. Ethan froze. What? I handed him the preliminary report. There were no accusations of an affair. There were, however, multiple governance concerns. Madison had bypassed procurement protocols on 2 overseas projects. She had approved consulting payments to vendors with incomplete ownership disclosures. She had used Ethan's verbal authorization to override regional managers. She had repeatedly represented herself to outside partners as someone who could speak for the CEO. There were also complaints from 2 female executives who believed Madison had retaliated against them after they challenged her authority. Ethan flipped through the pages. You investigated her without telling me? I reviewed a senior executive whose conduct created legal and governance risks. You could have spoken to me first. You are the subject of half the complaints. His face darkened. That's absurd. She uses your name to override controls. And you allow it. She gets results. So do people who commit fraud. His head snapped up. You have no evidence of fraud. Not yet. I held his gaze. But I have enough evidence to remove her from your direct reporting line while the review continues. You can't be serious. She will be transferred to our Singapore office next week. She has 3 core projects. Those projects belong to Whitmore Holdings, not Madison. Ethan closed the folder. You're punishing her because you're jealous. I almost laughed. Do you truly believe I would need a compliance report to remove a woman because I was jealous? His silence answered me. I stepped closer. Listen carefully. This is not a suggestion. Madison will be reassigned while the audit continues. If the review clears her, she can return to a senior role. If it does not, she will be terminated. Ethan stared at me for a long time. How long are you planning to keep her away? That depends. On what? On whether she understands professional boundaries. I paused. And whether you do. The next morning, Ethan issued the transfer order. He did it before 8. The announcement was brief and poorly written, as if he wanted the entire company to know he had acted under pressure. Madison was reassigned to Singapore as acting director of regional strategy. It was technically a promotion in title. In practice, it removed her from Ethan's office, his executive meetings, and his direct authority. For several months, things became quiet. Then almost a year passed. I convinced myself the problem had ended. That was my second mistake. Every December, Ethan and I spent one weekend with his parents in Westchester. They lived in a house I had purchased after Ethan became CEO. His mother never felt entirely comfortable around me. She was polite, grateful, and always slightly afraid of saying the wrong thing. I did my best to make things easier. I rarely discussed business in their home. I brought thoughtful gifts. I made sure their medical bills were handled quietly. That year, Ethan traveled there before me because I had a morning meeting in Manhattan. I arrived shortly after 4 in the afternoon. My assistant carried 2 gift bags to the front door. Before I could ring the bell, the door opened. Madison stood inside. For one moment, neither of us spoke. She wore a pale sweater, dark trousers, and an apron around her waist. Her hair was tied back. On her feet were the cream-colored house slippers Ethan's mother kept for me. Madison smiled. "Claire." She reached for the gift bags. "It's been a long time." My assistant looked at me before releasing them. I did not move. Madison stepped aside. "Come in. Dinner is almost ready. I made Ethan's favorite roast." She gave a small laugh. "I hope you're hungry." Behind her, Ethan's mother appeared in the hallway. "Claire." Her smile was nervous. "You made it." I looked from her to Madison. Then I looked down at the slippers. "Take those off." Madison's smile faded. "I'm sorry." "The slippers." I spoke calmly. "They are mine." She glanced down as though noticing them for the first time. "Oh." Ethan's mother told me I could use them. "I don't care who gave you permission." I lifted my eyes. "Take them off." Ethan's mother stepped forward. "Claire, please. It's just a pair of slippers." "No." The room became still. Madison slowly removed them. She stood barefoot on the hardwood floor, her face flushed. "I didn't mean to offend you. You were reassigned to another continent because you repeatedly ignored professional boundaries. And now I find you cooking in my in-laws' house, wearing my things, greeting me at the door like I'm a guest." I tilted my head. "Tell me what part of this was accidental." Her eyes filled with tears. "I came to see Mrs. Cole. She was ill last year. I stayed with her after surgery when Ethan was overseas. She became like family to me." Ethan's mother looked uncomfortable. "Madison did help me. I invited her." I nodded. "That explains why she entered the house. It does not explain why she is behaving like she belongs in my marriage." Madison's expression changed. Something proud and wounded surfaced beneath the tears. "You think everything belongs to you." "Excuse me. You have the family name, the money, the board, the company." Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. "People like you never understand what it costs the rest of us to earn anything. Ethan and I built Lumina together. We spent nights sleeping in offices. We flew across the world to save projects. We fought for every client. You arrived at events in a white dress and everyone praised you." She laughed bitterly. "You don't know what it means to struggle for a place in the room." I watched her for several seconds. Then I looked past her. Ethan stood at the entrance to the living room. He had clearly heard enough. "Does the rest of us include you?" I asked him. His expression tightened. Madison turned. "Ethan." There was too much emotion in the way she said his name. He looked at her, then at me. "Go home, Madison." Her face collapsed. "But I'll have someone drive you." She stared at him. For one brief moment, I saw her anger. Then she untied the apron, placed it on the table, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she looked at me. Not apologetically. Defiantly. Ethan's mother disappeared upstairs almost immediately. My assistant quietly carried the gifts back outside without being asked. Ethan waited until the door closed. I didn't know she would be here. I removed my gloves. "You arrived this morning." My mother invited her. "You arrived this morning," I repeated. He exhaled. "Yes." "You saw her in the kitchen." "Yes." "You saw her wearing an apron." Yes. You saw her wearing my slippers. He said nothing. I smiled. You may not have invited her, but you allowed her to stay. My mother wanted her here. You are 40 years old, Ethan. Do not hide behind your mother. His face hardened. She helped my mother through surgery. So did the private nurse I hired. That isn't the same. No. I agreed. The nurse did not want to replace me. You're being unreasonable. And you're pretending not to understand what she is doing. I told her to leave. After I arrived. He rubbed his jaw. What do you want from me? I want you to stop asking that question after every betrayal. His eyes flashed. This is not a betrayal. Not yet. The words left my mouth quietly. That was what frightened him. I walked toward the door. He followed me. You're leaving? Yes. My parents are expecting us to have dinner. Then they can eat the roast Madison cooked. Claire. His voice grew sharper. You see them once a year. Do you really have to punish them because you're angry with me? I stopped. Your mother invited a woman who openly disrespected me into her home. You saw it. You allowed it. And now you expect me to sit at the table and pretend nothing happened so everyone else can feel comfortable. He stepped closer. I said I was sorry. No. You said you didn't invite her. That is not an apology. His face turned cold. Fine. I'm sorry. The words were hard and resentful. There. Are you satisfied? I looked at him. You think an apology is a password. You say it, and I'm required to unlock the door. That isn't how consequences work. I turned and walked toward the car. He caught my arm. Don't do this. I looked down at his hand. He released me immediately. If you leave now, my parents will think you look down on them. Then perhaps you should explain why their son allowed another woman to play hostess to his wife. His jaw tightened. You always have to win. No. I opened the car door. I simply refuse to lose my dignity so you can keep yours. I left him standing in the driveway. He did not come home that night. Or the next. By the third day, the silence had become deliberate. Ethan wanted me to call. He wanted me to ask when he was coming home. He wanted proof that I needed him enough to compromise. I did none of those things. On the fourth evening, Whitmore Holdings hosted our private New Year reception at my family's estate in Greenwich. Ethan arrived 10 minutes before dinner. Julian Hayes stood beside me when Ethan's car pulled into the circular driveway. Julian had known me since we were children. He was the son of one of my father's oldest business partners and had the unfortunate habit of saying out loud what everyone else preferred to imply. He whistled softly. Your husband finally decided to attend. I watched Ethan step out of the car. He likes an entrance. Julian studied my face. You've been too generous with him. Generosity is only a mistake when the recipient confuses it with weakness. Julian smiled. That sounds dangerous. For him, perhaps. Inside the reception hall, Ethan and I performed exactly as expected. I placed my hand on his arm. He stood beside me. We greeted investors and relatives as though our marriage were perfectly intact. But his body remained tense. When photographers approached, I leaned toward him. Relax. He looked down at me. Smile. His mouth curved. The result looked more like pain. Julian appeared a few minutes later with a glass of bourbon in his hand. Ethan Cole. He sounded delighted. The man who turned Lumina into a $400 million company. Ethan nodded. Julian. My father talks about you constantly. Julian lifted his glass. He says you're proof that talent matters more than pedigree. Ethan's expression softened slightly. Then Julian continued. Of course, talent needs the right door. The air changed. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Julian smiled as if he had not noticed. Some people spend 20 years searching for an opportunity. Others marry the person who owns the building. Julian, I said. But there was no warning in my voice. Ethan heard that. Julian took another sip. I mean it as a compliment. It takes intelligence to recognize the right opportunity. And discipline to remember where it came from. He leaned closer. The dangerous part is when a man starts thinking the key he was given means he owns the house. Ethan's face went still. Julian smiled broadly. Too much. Probably. Forgive me. Family gatherings make me sentimental. He walked away before Ethan could respond. Ethan turned to me. His expression was controlled. Only his eyes revealed the fury beneath it. I lifted my champagne glass. He said nothing for the remainder of the reception. But on the drive home, the moment the privacy screen rose between us and the driver, he spoke. "You owe me an explanation." I looked out at the dark road. For what? For allowing Julian to speak to me like that. I don't control Julian. You could have stopped him. Did he say something untrue? Ethan laughed once. There was no humor in it. There it is. What? The way you look at me. I turned toward him. How do I look at you? Like I'm still the man who walked into your father's house asking for permission to exist. That is not what happened. It is exactly what happened. His voice grew lower. You control my company. You control the board. You decide who works for me. You humiliate my parents. You let your friends call me a fortune hunter. And then you sit there wondering why I'm angry. I removed an executive from your reporting line because she violated company policy. You punished her because she challenged you. She committed governance violations. She made you jealous. I stared at him. He continued before I could speak. You don't know how to separate marriage from power. You believe that because your family funded Lumina, you own every decision I make. Whitmore Holdings does own Lumina. That is not what I mean. Then say what you mean. He drew a slow breath. I am your husband, not your employee. Then behave like my husband. His expression changed. What is that supposed to mean? It means protecting the boundaries of our marriage before I have to. It means not allowing another woman to speak as though she built your life while I merely watched. It means not letting her enter your parents' home and take my place. It means recognizing that when she calls herself part of the rest of us, she is asking you to choose a side. And you keep choosing hers. I sent her away. You allowed her in first. My mother invited her. You keep repeating that as if it absolves you. He leaned forward. What else do you want? I want you to understand the difference between innocence and passivity. You may not have touched her. You may never have promised her anything. But you enjoy the way she admires you. You enjoy that she sees you as self-made. You enjoy letting her challenge me because every time she does, you feel less dependent on my family. His face turned cold. You think you understand everything. I understand you. No, Claire. He shook his head. You understand control. That is not the same thing. I said nothing. He continued. You need to learn how to be a wife. The car seemed to become completely still. Even the sound of the tires disappeared beneath the weight of the sentence. I looked at him carefully. What did you say? He hesitated. Then pride pushed him forward. I said you need to learn how to be a wife. You need to understand that marriage is not a boardroom. You cannot issue commands and expect everyone to obey. You cannot humiliate my parents because you are angry. You cannot remove my executives because you feel threatened. And you cannot sit beside another man while he insults your husband. I almost admired the confidence it took to say those words. Almost. He continued. A wife protects her husband's dignity in public. She compromises with his family. She does not use money and power to win every disagreement. And Madison deserves better than what you did to her. I laughed. The sound surprised him. You're defending her again. I'm defending fairness. No. I shook my head. You're defending the woman who makes you feel like the man you want to believe you are. His eyes hardened. And you make me feel like I'll always be beneath you. That is your insecurity. Not my cruelty. You built your entire identity around being the person who gave me a chance. I did give you a chance. And I turned it into a company worth $400 million. With my family's capital. My family's patents. My family's credit. My family's distribution network. And my signature on every guarantee that kept you alive when the company nearly collapsed. His jaw clenched. So that is all I am to you? An investment? I held his gaze. No. You were my husband. But tonight, you sat in a car purchased by my family, after leaving a reception hosted by my family, while running a company owned by my family, and told me I needed to learn my place. His breathing slowed. I leaned closer. I gave you a seat at the table. That did not give you the right to put me beneath it. He looked away. I pressed the button beside me. The privacy screen lowered. Pull over. The driver immediately moved toward the side of the road. Ethan turned back. What are you doing? You said I control everything. So I'm removing the control. The car stopped. I opened the door beside him. From this moment forward, I will not interfere with Lumina's daily operations. You may appoint anyone you choose. You may restructure your executive team. You may pursue whatever strategy you believe proves your independence. His suspicion returned. What is this? Freedom. I smiled. You have spent years believing my involvement prevented you from proving yourself. I am stepping aside. He did not move. And our marriage? You no longer need to report your schedule to me. You do not need to attend family events. You do not need to come home unless you choose to. That isn't what I asked. It is what you wanted. His face became unreadable. You're threatening me. No. I'm giving you exactly what you demanded. I gestured toward the open door. Now get out. For a moment, I thought he would refuse. Then he stepped onto the pavement. Before closing the door, he leaned down. One day, Claire, you're going to regret treating me like something you can discard. I looked at him through the open doorway. One day, Ethan, you're going to understand the difference between being discarded and being allowed to stand on your own. Then I closed the door. I did not look back. The next morning, Lumina announced that Madison Reed had returned from Singapore. She was appointed Chief Strategy Officer with expanded authority. Ethan did not seek board approval. He did not inform compliance. He did not notify me. He simply brought her back. When my chief of staff placed the announcement on my desk, she looked worried. Do you want legal to intervene? No. Compliance can block the appointment. I know. Then why allow it? I closed the document. Because Ethan believes I have been holding him back. I looked through the windows at Manhattan below. The fastest way to learn what a man truly wants is to stop preventing him from taking it. Within 2 weeks, Madison had moved into the office beside Ethan's. Within 3, senior managers began referring to them as the team that had really built Lumina. Rumors spread through the company. Ethan was finally free of Whitmore interference. Madison was the only executive who truly understood his vision. I was an heiress who knew how to sign checks, but not how to build products. Every rumor reached me. I ignored them all. Then Ethan submitted a request for $25 million in expansion capital. My finance director expected me to reject it. I approved it within an hour. That was when Ethan made his final mistake. He mistook silence for surrender. 3 days after the capital was approved, Ethan presented a restructuring proposal to Lumina's executive team. He wanted to separate the company from Whitmore Holdings. Not immediately. Not publicly. At first, he called it a strategic independence plan. The language was careful. Lumina would establish a new holding company. Outside investors would provide growth capital. Management would receive additional equity. Whitmore Holdings would remain the largest shareholder, but its voting control would be reduced. The proposal also recommended transferring Lumina's trademarks, overseas distribution agreements, and core technology licenses into the new entity. On paper, it looked like modernization. In reality, it was a management-led takeover. My father read the proposal in silence. We were sitting in his library at the Greenwich estate. The same room where Ethan had once described his plans for Lumina with bright eyes and nervous hands. My father turned the final page. He wants to dilute the family trust. Yes, he wants the patents transferred. Licensed for 20 years with automatic renewal. And he wants 12% of the new company personally. Madison wants 6. My father removed his glasses. You approved $25 million after seeing this coming? The proposal was submitted after I approved it. But you expected something. I expected him to test the boundaries. My father studied me. You sound calm. I am. That usually means someone is about to regret something. I smiled. He says I never trusted him. So I'm giving him enough room to show me what he does with trust. My father closed the file. Do you still love him? The question surprised me. Not because I had never considered it. Because I had avoided answering it. I loved the man who wanted to build something beside me. And this man wants to take what we built and pretend I was never there. My father nodded slowly. Then make sure you punish the theft. Not the pride. I understood what he meant. Pride was not illegal. Resentment was not a governance violation. A failing marriage was not evidence of corporate misconduct. If I acted too early, Ethan would tell himself I had destroyed him because he challenged me. He would never understand what he had actually done. So I waited. 3 days later, Ethan came home for the first time in almost 2 weeks. I was in the glass conservatory at the rear of the house, trimming dead leaves from a row of white roses. He entered without removing his coat. He looked tired, but energized. The way he always did when he believed he was close to winning. He placed a document on the table. Lumina is ready for the next stage. I wiped my hands. I saw the preliminary proposal. This is the final version. I opened it. The structure was more aggressive than the first draft. A private equity firm called Northbridge Capital would invest $80 million. In exchange, it would receive 28% of the new holding company. Whitmore Holdings would fall from 72% ownership to 39%. Management and outside investors would control the remaining shares. Ethan would become executive chairman. Madison would become chief operating officer. The family trust would lose its ability to remove management without support from outside directors. I turned another page. The intellectual property transfer was buried inside an appendix. Lumina's patents were owned by Whitmore Technologies. The proposal demanded an exclusive worldwide license for 20 years at a nominal annual fee. The overseas distribution agreements would also move into the new company. So would several long-term customer contracts negotiated through Whitmore Holdings. Ethan was not asking to stand alone. He was asking to walk away with the floor beneath his feet. "This requires your signature," he said. I looked up. "Mine? You chair the trust's investment committee. You also control the proxy votes." "I know what I control." His expression tightened. "Then you know this cannot move forward without you." I leaned back in the chair. "Why should it move forward?" "Because Lumina has outgrown Whitmore Holdings." That is an interesting way to describe a company financed, insured, distributed, and legally protected by Whitmore Holdings. He exhaled. "This is exactly what I mean." "What do you mean?" "You refuse to see Lumina as anything except an asset you own." "It is an asset we own. I built it. With our infrastructure. With my leadership. With our capital. With my team. With executives transferred from 3 Whitmore divisions." His jaw tightened. "You always have an answer." "I usually have records." He placed both hands on the table. "Claire, Lumina cannot keep operating under a family structure. It needs outside capital. It needs independent governance. It needs room to move without waiting for your approval. Northbridge gives us that. Northbridge gives you voting support." "That is not the same thing." "It is exactly the same thing." I tapped the document. "Under this structure, you and Northbridge can outvote the family trust on executive appointments. You can issue new shares without our consent. You can move contracts between subsidiaries. And you can keep using Whitmore patents while stripping Whitmore of control." He said nothing. I closed the file. "This is not independence. This is appropriation." His face darkened. "That's an ugly word." "It is an accurate one. You think everything belongs to you." "No." I pushed the document toward him. "I think the things registered, financed, and guaranteed by Whitmore Holdings belong to Whitmore Holdings. Lumina's value comes from the people who built it." "Then take the people." His expression changed. I continued. "Take the executives who want to follow you. Take your product ideas. Take your leadership. Raise your own capital. Build your own supply chain. Negotiate your own distribution agreements. But you do not get to call yourself independent while carrying away my family's patents, customers, credit, and contracts." He stared at me. "You're afraid I'll succeed without you." I laughed softly. "No, Ethan. I'm curious whether you can." His face went still. I uncapped a pen. For one moment, hope entered his eyes. He believed I was going to sign. Instead, I wrote one word across the approval page. "Rejected." Then I dated it. His expression hardened. "You told me you would stop interfering." "I stopped interfering with daily operations. I did not surrender control of the family trust." "You lied." "No. You heard what you wanted to hear." He picked up the file. "You will regret this." You've said that before. I mean it this time. So do I. He turned toward the door. Ethan. He stopped. I stood. If you choose to separate Lumina from Whitmore Holdings, the separation will be complete. He looked back. What does that mean? It means no patents. No group purchasing agreements. No Whitmore distribution contracts. No parent company guarantees. No shared legal team. No use of our overseas offices. No access to our customer database. His eyes narrowed. You would cripple the company just to prove a point? I would protect the assets I am legally obligated to protect. Lumina is my company. Then prove it. He walked back toward me. We both know the clients trust me. They trust delivery. The management team follows me. Some of them do. The market associates Lumina with my name. Then your name should be enough. His voice dropped. You really want to test me? No. I met his eyes. You have been demanding this test for years. The following morning, Ethan convened an emergency meeting at Lumina's headquarters. He announced that management would pursue an independent transaction with Northbridge Capital. He told the executives Whitmore Holdings had become an obstacle to innovation. He said the company's future depended on removing legacy control. Madison stood beside him while he spoke. According to the recording later provided to the board, she told the room. For years, this team has created value while people outside the company took credit for it. This is our opportunity to own what we built. More than half the senior managers signed letters supporting the transaction. Several regional sales directors agreed to resign and join the new company if the board rejected it. A product development team prepared copies of internal files. 3 executives contacted customers and suggested their contracts would continue under Ethan's leadership, regardless of what Whitmore Holdings decided. Every action was recorded. Not because I had ordered anyone to spy. Because companies preserve email, access logs, and document transfers. People often forget that when they begin believing they are untouchable. My general counsel entered my office that afternoon. We need to freeze access. Not yet. Claire, they are exporting files. Which files? Customer lists, supplier agreements, internal forecasts. Are the downloads being logged? Yes. Then preserve the evidence. He frowned. You're letting them continue? I'm allowing them to show intent. They could damage the company. Can they transfer patents without board approval? No. Can they assign customer contracts? No. Can they move cash? Not without finance controls. Then let them talk. He placed another folder on my desk. There's something else. The forensic accounting team had expanded its review of Madison. The preliminary concerns from the previous year had not disappeared when she moved to Singapore. They had simply become harder to see. 7 vendors connected to Lumina's overseas operations showed unusual pricing patterns. 3 were controlled through holding companies linked to Madison's brother and cousin. Several invoices described consulting work that could not be verified. 2 payments had been approved under emergency authority. Ethan had signed both. How much? I asked. So far, $6.4 million in questionable transfers. Where did it go? We traced $1.8 million to an account in the Cayman Islands. Beneficial owner? We're still confirming. Madison. Likely. I looked toward the window. And Ethan. No direct payments to him. Did he know? We can't prove that. Then we don't accuse him. My general counsel nodded. The special committee should be formed immediately. Independent directors only. And external forensic counsel. Yes. We also need to notify the insurers. Do it. He hesitated. What about Ethan? He will be informed when the committee is ready. You're still treating him as if he might be innocent. He may be innocent of theft. I closed the file. That does not make him innocent of everything else. 1 month later, the Whitmore Holdings board convened a special meeting. Ethan arrived with Madison and 2 Northbridge representatives. He wore a dark gray suit. Madison wore black. They entered together. Not touching. Not smiling. But aligned. That was what mattered. The independent directors occupied one side of the conference table. My father attended remotely. External counsel sat near the door. Ethan distributed the final proposal. Lumina's management team has voted unanimously to support the separation, he began. That vote has no legal effect, Director Langford said. It demonstrates management's position. It demonstrates that employees prefer additional equity, another director replied. Ethan ignored the comment. Northbridge has committed $80 million. The new structure will protect Lumina's growth. Whitmore Holdings will receive 39% of the new company and repayment of its original cash investment. A director stared at him. Original cash investment? Yes. Lumina is currently valued at $400 million. That valuation reflects management performance. And the patents? Licensed. The distribution network? Transferred. The parent guarantees? Released after refinancing. Director Langford leaned forward. So Whitmore gives up control, patents, contracts, and infrastructure. In exchange, we receive less than 40% of a company we currently own. Ethan remained composed. Whitmore has already received substantial returns. Your family should not be allowed to extract value indefinitely from people who created it. The room became quiet. Madison spoke. Lumina needs modern governance. It cannot remain the private property of one family. I looked at her. You are employed by a company owned by that family. Her mouth tightened. I am employed by Lumina. Lumina is owned by Whitmore Holdings. For now. The Northbridge representatives exchanged a glance. Ethan looked at me. Claire, I don't want this to become personal. It became personal when you brought your wife into a corporate proposal? No. He leaned back. It became personal when you used our marriage to control my company. A few directors shifted in their seats. He continued. If you approve the transaction, our marriage does not have to change. I almost smiled. What a generous offer. I'm being serious. So am I. He folded his hands. You remain chair of Whitmore Holdings. I run Lumina. We stop interfering in each other's work. At home, we start treating each other as equals. Describe equality. He took my question as encouragement. In public, you support me. You stop allowing Julian and others to humiliate me. You apologize to my parents for leaving their home. You stop targeting Madison. And you stop using your position to override my decisions. He paused. You should also keep some distance from Julian. I stared at him. Why? Everyone knows how he feels about you. Do they? Don't play games. I am not the one who brought a questionable emotional attachment into the boardroom. Madison's face changed. Ethan's voice sharpened. Do not insult her. I tilted my head. Her? My executive. That is not what you said. His eyes narrowed. What did I say? You said, do not insult her. You did not say the chief strategy officer. You did not say a member of management. You defended her as a man defends someone he considers his own. Madison's eyes brightened despite herself. Ethan noticed. Too late. I leaned back. Continue. He looked unsettled. There is nothing else. You have instructed me to apologize to your parents, support your takeover, accept Madison, stop speaking to Julian, and refrain from using my voting rights. Yes. And in return, our marriage continues. The silence that followed was almost beautiful. He truly believed that was enough. I looked toward external counsel. Begin. Ethan frowned. Begin what? The doors opened. The chair of the special committee entered with 2 forensic accountants and an attorney from the firm conducting the investigation. A representative from Whitmore's insurer followed them. Madison went pale. The committee chair placed a thick report on the table. Over the last 6 weeks, the special committee has investigated irregular transactions involving Lumina's smart home and several overseas vendors. Ethan turned toward Madison. She did not look at him. The chair continued. We identified 7 entities that received payments for consulting, procurement, and market entry services. 3 of those entities were ultimately controlled by relatives of Madison Reed. Madison's voice came quickly. That is false. The forensic accountant opened a binder. Corporate registration records, banking documents, and beneficial ownership declarations are included in Appendix 4. We also identified repeated overbilling, duplicate invoices, and payments for services that could not be verified. The total questionable amount is approximately $6.4 million. One of the Northbridge representatives closed his notebook. The committee chair continued. Approximately $1.8 million was transferred through 2 intermediary accounts to an offshore entity controlled by Ms. Reed. Madison stood. This is a setup. No one leave the room, external counsel said. You cannot detain me. We are not detaining you. However, company devices and records are subject to preservation orders. Madison turned to Ethan. Say something. He looked stunned. What is this? She reached for his arm. I can explain. He pulled away. The movement was small, but everyone saw it. The forensic accountant placed 3 authorization forms on the table. These payments bypassed ordinary review because they were classified as urgent operational expenses. All 3 were authorized by Mr. Cole. Ethan grabbed the documents. You told me the Singapore rollout would fail without immediate payment. Madison's breathing quickened. It would have. To companies controlled by your family? I didn't know they were connected. The accountant opened another page. You exchanged messages with your brother regarding invoice timing. Madison's face lost all color. Ethan read the printed messages. His hands began to shake. You used my authorization. I protected us. The words escaped her before she could stop them. The room went still. Ethan looked at her. What? She swallowed. I protected the company. That is not what you said. Her eyes filled with tears. Ethan, think about what we were trying to do. Northbridge wanted management to contribute capital. You wanted to leave Whitmore. We needed resources that Claire could not freeze. He stared at her. You stole money. I moved money. Into your account. It was temporary. She stepped closer. I did it for us. The final word changed everything. Ethan's expression collapsed. Madison seemed to realize it, but panic had taken control. You said the company should belong to the people who built it. You said once you had control, no one would treat me like I was disposable. You said Claire never understood what we sacrificed. You said I was the only person who had been beside you from the beginning. Ethan's face became gray. Every director at the table heard her. So did the Northbridge representatives. One of them pushed back his chair. We are suspending all discussions effective immediately. Madison turned toward him. You can't. We can and we are. She looked at Ethan again. Tell them. He did not speak. Her fear turned into anger. You promised me. I promised you a role. You promised me more than that. His eyes shut briefly. When they opened, he looked older. External counsel spoke. Ms. Reed, your employment is suspended effective immediately. You are required to surrender all company devices and access credentials. The matter has been referred to law enforcement and regulatory authorities. Madison looked toward the door. 2 investigators from the State Financial Crimes Unit were waiting outside. They did not arrest her in the boardroom. They presented a warrant for electronic devices and informed her that she was required to accompany counsel for an interview. Madison turned to Ethan as she was escorted away. You let her do this. He looked at her with disbelief. She didn't do this. You did. The doors closed. No one spoke for several seconds. Then I nodded to the committee chair. Continue. He opened the second section of the report. The investigation also identified conduct by Mr. Cole that raises serious governance concerns. Ethan looked up. I did not know about the vendor ownership. The committee has not concluded that you personally benefited from the transactions. His shoulders loosened slightly. However, you repeatedly bypassed internal controls. You approved emergency payments without verification. You attempted to transfer company assets without authorization. You encouraged employees to copy confidential information in preparation for joining a new entity. And you supported communications to customers suggesting contracts could follow management regardless of ownership. Ethan's face hardened. That was part of a legitimate transaction. No transaction had been approved. The committee chair slid another document forward. You also failed to disclose the extent of your personal relationship with Ms. Reed while participating in decisions involving her compensation, promotion, and authority. There was no affair. That is not the standard. He looked directly at Ethan. The standard is whether a reasonable person could question your impartiality. Ethan said nothing. External counsel continued. Under the executive compensation agreement, your restricted shares are subject to repurchase in the event of material misconduct, breach of fiduciary duty, or unauthorized diversion of corporate opportunities. You are also subject to a 2-year non-compete and confidentiality provision. Ethan turned to me. You planned this? No. I folded my hands. You did. You let me bring Madison back. Yes. You approved the capital. Yes. You watched every step. I watched you make choices. His voice broke through the control he had maintained. You could have stopped this. I tried to stop it a year ago. You called it jealousy. I warned you when she used your authority to bypass controls. You called it interference. I warned you when she entered your parents' home. You called me cruel. I warned you when you tried to transfer the patents. You called them yours. I looked at him steadily. How many times was I required to save you from the consequences of your own decisions? His mouth opened. Nothing came out. The board voted. Ethan was removed as CEO immediately. His restricted shares would be repurchased at the original grant price, subject to final legal review. His access to all Whitmore systems was terminated. The proposed transaction with Northbridge was formally rejected. Several executives who had copied confidential data were suspended pending investigation. Others submitted resignations before the meeting ended. When everyone left, Ethan remained seated. The city stretched behind him through the glass walls. For years, that view had belonged to him. Now he looked like a visitor. I gather my documents. Claire. His voice was barely audible. I stopped. He stared at the table. You never trusted me. I almost walked away. Instead, I sat down across from him. I gave you control of a company worth tens of millions of dollars. I placed my family's reputation behind your name. I guaranteed loans with my personal assets. I defended you when people called you an opportunist. I transferred executives from other divisions because you said you needed them. I supported you when Lumina lost money for 3 consecutive quarters. I leaned forward. What would trust have looked like to you? He finally raised his eyes. Respect. I respected your ability. You never respected me as an equal. You wanted equality without accepting equal responsibility. His face tightened. You always believed you could take everything back. Because some of it was never yours. The company was my life. It was also an asset owned by thousands of employees, investors, and trust beneficiaries. You treated it like proof of your worth. That is why you could not separate your pride from your duty. He looked away. I didn't know Madison was stealing. I believe you. He looked surprised. But you knew she wanted more than a professional relationship. His silence returned. You knew she resented me. You knew she used you to challenge my authority. You knew she considered herself your true partner. You allowed it because her admiration made you feel independent. His eyes reddened. I never slept with her. I know. I never kissed her. I know. Then why are you looking at me like I cheated? Because betrayal does not begin in a hotel room. I spoke quietly. It begins when your first instinct is to protect another woman from your wife. It deepens when you share resentments with her that you refuse to discuss at home. And it becomes complete when you bring her into a plan to take control of the company your wife trusted you to lead. He covered his face with one hand. For a moment, I remembered the man he had been. The man who stayed awake for 3 nights preparing his first investor presentation. The man who waited outside my office with coffee when my mother died. The man who once told me he did not want my name, only the chance to deserve it. That man had existed. But he was not sitting in front of me anymore. I opened my briefcase and removed one final document. I placed it on the table. Ethan stared at the cover. Petition for dissolution of marriage. His face emptied. You're divorcing me. Yes. He did not touch the document. Because of Madison? Because of you. I didn't steal the money. No. I didn't know what she was doing. No. Then why? Because you stopped seeing me as your wife. You saw me as the obstacle between you and the life you believed you deserved. You built an alliance with someone who despised me. You tried to use our marriage to pressure me into surrendering control. And when you believed you were winning, you instructed me how to behave. He looked at the papers. 5 years. 6. His eyes closed. 6 years, and this is how it ends? This is how you ended it. He looked at me again. If I sign, what happens? The assets governed by our prenuptial agreement remain separate. The properties I transferred to you personally are yours. So are your vehicles, investment accounts, and personal savings. The restricted company shares returned to Whitmore under your employment agreement. His expression twisted. You're letting me keep the houses? I gave them to you. I do not take back gifts. But you'll take the company. The company was not a gift. He laughed bitterly. At least you're consistent. Yes, I am. He signed 2 weeks later. Not because he accepted the divorce. Because the legal reality left him little room to fight. Our prenuptial agreement was clear. The family trust was separate property. Whitmore Holdings was separate property. The restricted shares were compensation governed by an employment contract, not marital assets. He kept enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. But comfort was never what Ethan wanted. He wanted proof. 3 months after the divorce, he launched a new smart home company. Several former Lumina employees joined him. He invested much of his personal wealth. At first, the industry press treated his return as a comeback story. The brilliant founder who had escaped a controlling family empire. The executive who would finally prove he had been the real force behind Lumina. For a few weeks, investors listened. Then the problems began. His new company could not use Whitmore's patents. Developing alternative technology took longer than expected. Suppliers offered him prices 27% higher than Lumina's. Banks refused favorable credit terms because the company had no operating history and Ethan no longer had Whitmore guarantees. Several major customers declined to move their contracts. They respected Ethan, but they trusted Whitmore's scale, service network, and financial stability more. The former executives who followed him expected equity and senior titles. Within months, they began fighting over authority. Ethan spent too quickly. He leased expensive offices. He hired aggressively before the product was ready. He launched a marketing campaign to announce a system that failed independent testing twice. He was still talented. But talent could not replace infrastructure, patience, compliance, or capital discipline. A year after the board meeting, his company entered restructuring. 6 months later, it filed for bankruptcy. By then, Madison had been formally charged with fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. Most of the missing funds were recovered. The investigation uncovered something even Ethan had not known. While helping him negotiate with Northbridge, Madison had also contacted one of Whitmore's competitors. She offered customer data and product development information in exchange for a future executive role. Her plan was not to build an independent company with Ethan. Her plan was to gain access to the new entity, secure equity, and sell whatever she could. She had used his resentment exactly as he had used my access years earlier. The difference was that Ethan had once wanted to build something. Madison only wanted a faster way up. I did not attend the trial. Ethan did. A reporter sent my communications director a photograph of him sitting alone in the back row. When Madison entered the courtroom, she looked at him once. According to someone seated nearby, she whispered as she passed. If you had been stronger, we would have won. Perhaps that was the moment he finally understood. Madison had never loved the man beneath the title. She loved the title. The office. The access. The possibility that he could become powerful enough to carry her upward. When that power disappeared, so did her admiration. After his company failed, Ethan sold 2 of the properties I had given him. He used the proceeds to settle debts and pay employees. That was the first decision he made in years that reminded me of the man I had married. I heard about it from someone else. I did not contact him. Whitmore Holdings reorganized Lumina. We appointed a new chief executive named Daniel Mercer. Daniel had started as a systems engineer. He had no family connections, no inherited wealth, no famous last name. He understood the technology better than anyone on the board. He also understood something Ethan never had. A platform did not diminish the person standing on it. Acknowledging support did not erase personal achievement. Daniel never pretended he had built Lumina alone. He credited the engineers, the supply teams, the regional offices, and the capital that made risk possible. Under his leadership, Lumina recovered. 2 years after Ethan's removal, the company entered 3 new markets and surpassed its previous valuation. At that year's annual gala, I wore white again. Not because I was trying to recreate the past. Because white had always been my color. An investor approached me near the stage. "Claire, are you ever going to marry again?" I smiled. "Is that a business question?" "Pure curiosity." Then no comment. He laughed. "Don't you get lonely?" "Sometimes." The honesty surprised him. I continued. "But loneliness is not a reason to invite the wrong person back into your life." Before he could respond, security approached. "Chairman Whitmore." "Yes. There's someone at the entrance asking to speak with you." I looked toward the glass doors. Ethan stood outside. He wore a dark coat. His hair was shorter. He looked thinner than before. Not broken. Just stripped of everything he once used to hide behind. The title. The office. The anger. The belief that every reminder of help was an insult. I walked toward him. Security remained nearby. Ethan gave a small smile. "I'm not here to cause trouble." "I know. I only need 5 minutes." I stepped outside. Cold air moved across the terrace. Behind us, the gala continued. Music. Light. Conversation. A world he had once believed belonged to him. He looked through the glass. "Lumina is doing well." "Yes. Daniel Mercer was a good choice." "He earned it." Ethan nodded. "I used to think you only promoted people who would obey you. And now?" "Now I think you promoted people who understood responsibility." I said nothing. He placed his hands in his coat pockets. "I owe you an apology." "You already apologized during the divorce." "No. I defended myself during the divorce." "That isn't the same thing." He looked at me. "I spent years believing you were ashamed of me. I thought every time you reminded me what Whitmore provided, you were reminding me I did not belong. I hated being called a fortune hunter. I hated that people assumed I married you for access. You did marry me partly for access." "I know." He smiled without humor. "That was the part one couldn't admit. I loved you. But I also saw the door your name could open. And after I walked through it, I became desperate to convince everyone I had never needed the door." His eyes lowered. Madison understood that. She knew exactly what to say. "She told me I built everything. She told me you only tolerated me because I was useful. She told me you would never let me become your equal." And I believed her because it was easier than admitting I was afraid. Afraid of what? That without Whitmore, I would disappear. The answer came quietly. "And when you told me I could stand alone, I thought you were bluffing." "You weren't." "No." He looked back at the ballroom. "I finally learned something." "What?" "I was capable. But I was never self-made." "No one is." He nodded. "I know that now." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he asked the question I had expected from the moment I saw him outside. "Is there any chance for us?" I looked at him. There had been a time when that face could undo me. A time when I would have forgiven the wrong tone, the late nights, the pride, and even the resentment. But forgiveness did not require reunion. Understanding did not restore trust. Growth did not erase damage. "No," I said. His eyes closed briefly. "Because you don't love me anymore?" "Part of me probably always will." He looked surprised. I continued. "But love is not the only requirement for marriage. You made me your enemy. You chose someone else as your ally. You tried to take control of my company and then told me our marriage could continue if I accepted your terms. You did not simply make a mistake. You revealed what you were willing to do when you believed you no longer needed me." He swallowed. "I've changed." "I believe you." "Then why isn't that enough?" "Because your growth does not obligate me to reopen a door I survived closing." His eyes filled. He looked away before the tears could fall. "I understand." "I hope you do." He nodded. Then he gave me the first honest smile I had seen from him in years. "Goodbye, Claire." "Goodbye, Ethan." He walked down the terrace steps. No driver waited. No assistant opened a door. No one called him Mr. Cole or CEO. He was simply Ethan. A talented man who had finally learned to stand without pretending he had never been supported. I returned to the ballroom. Julian handed me a glass of champagne. "You look serious." I'm fine. Was it Ethan? Yes. Did he ask for another chance? Yes. And? I accepted the glass. No. Julian smiled. I expected nothing less. I looked toward the stage, where the Whitmore Holdings logo glowed above the crowd. For years, Ethan believed I wanted him beneath me. He was wrong. I had wanted him beside me. But standing beside someone requires more than talent. It requires loyalty, humility. The courage to acknowledge what you received without believing gratitude makes you weak. There was nothing shameful about marrying into my family. Nothing shameful about accepting help. Nothing shameful about building a career on a platform someone else opened. The shame was in using that platform, denying it existed, and then trying to push aside the person who gave you access. Ethan once told me I needed to learn how to be a wife. He wanted me quieter, more obedient, less powerful. He wanted me to apologize for the very strength that had built the life he enjoyed. But I had never asked him to be smaller. I only asked him not to confuse my love with surrender. I made my husband a CEO. He tried to put me in my place. So I reminded him whose place he had been standing in all along.